Yes, I'm Chris from Super Collider, as mentioned. When I saw the running order for tonight and I saw that Nelly Ben Hayoun, my great friend Nelly Ben Hayoun, was ahead of me, I thought, F-U-C-K, this is going to be hard. How do you follow up Nelly Ben Hayoun? And I guess you can. I'm going to try to slow things down a little bit, although I think I've got more slides. I worked out that I've got 5.3 seconds per slide to show you tonight, so I'm already behind schedule. Did want to tweet about how boring I am compared to Nelly. This is the hashtag, or the username. Hashtag being nicer Tuesdays. And yeah, I'd like to sort of, slow things down and basically take you to the moon. Looking at some of the Apollo pictures, and really, I guess as much as we can, just really taking time to really look at them on this big screen. I've spent hours and hours researching stuff for this project, and even now I just can't get used to the sheer kind of immensity of the fact that we went there. That, people landed on the moon between 1969 and 1972. They took thousands upon thousands and thousands of pictures. And we're really familiar with only a few of them, the sort of famous flag on the moon, the boot print. It's all sort of, overshadowed, I guess, the rest of what I guess can be described as a body of artistic work. This massive art project called, Project Apollo. So go back to the beginning, where we started our own Project Apollo. This was it. Or rather, this was the aftermath of it. This was an abandoned video store in South London. I don't know if anyone remembers the chain of British, blockbuster-style video stores. So this particular one went out of business, and it was taken over by a group of artists who programmed a whole series of events in the space. They got into it, they made their own bar, they filled it with people and music, and we basically got invited to do a night. And I guess thinking creatively, we thought, the place is called Apollo, what should we do? Let's do something about Apollo, not very creative. But yeah, we had a bunch of sort of artists that we knew of already who were doing works related to the Apollo program and the moon in general. Among them, Andrew Dodds, who did an excellent book with Bookworks, who are based just around the corner somewhere, that way. Basically, he detailed all the different objects left on the moon, all the hammers, all the equipment, all the garbage, rubbish, as you say. And he also made a couple of films, which we showed on the night. Had some very skilled DJs using Discmans, if anyone remembers those. It's a relic of technology. And the Apollo 77 program, which I'm going to talk to you about tonight, actually grew from this old video wall. And this was one of the actual walls where they displayed DVDs, if anyone remembers those, before Netflix. And funnily enough, there was 11 rows that way and 7 rows high, so it made 77 images. So again, being clever, creative people, we called it Apollo 77. Thank you very much. And I guess the original idea was to kind of show, all these like rare and unusual and somewhat artistic shots, like this one with sort of superimposed kind of flash. Wouldn't look out of place with a few fashion models around the catwalk on the side of it. And literally, the archive is full of this stuff. There's just so much amazing images. So for Apollo 77, the original incarnation, we tried to choose a real selection, kind of going from the whole genesis of the program, the testing, these sort of amazing shots of equipment, just all the weird paraphernalia, and again, just looking at the complete sort of, the art of Apollo. There's another building shot, lovely shot of the lunar rover before it was launched. Even some of the planning documents are just, again, works of art. This is, detailing some of the explorations on the later missions when they actually had a car to drive around in and check things out. Through to the launch, mission control, these beautifully blurry shots just showing the sunshine and, the incredible excitement of being in space for the first time as you lift it off. Arriving at the moon after a 3-day voyage through space. Slowly getting closer and closer to the surface, eventually touching down, famously taking off again. These shots were actually captured by a camera, in case you're wondering who was taking the pictures. It's a camera on a tripod, if there's any UFO conspiracy theorists out there. The return back to Earth, and finally, our home planet, a scene, returning, must have looked at a nice sight, splashing down the Pacific. But yeah, so for tonight, I want to kind of rewind a little bit, go back to the lunar surface, and as we started putting together this collection, we sort of came across more and more images that I guess really caught our eye in terms of their artistry, whether it's like deliberate or not, whether it's equipment like this. This is one of the experiment stations. So there's all sorts of different experiments going on here. There's seismology to look for like lunar earthquakes and measure the interior of the moon. There's a laser range-finding experiment, which is still going on, which allows scientists to shoot a laser up to the moon, measure the precise distance back, and prove that the moon is actually slowly drifting away from us. It's a weird fact that the moon is actually 400 times closer or further and bigger and smaller than the sun. So it's only at this exact moment in history that the sun is exactly big enough to block out the sun the moon is big enough to block out the sun in a solar eclipse. So in a couple of 100,000 years time, the moon is going to be so far away that we'll get a ring around it, and we won't see the eclipses like we see today. This is another one of the experiments they left up there, solar wind collection experiment. I'm going to start speeding up a little bit because, like I said, I've got a number of slides to get through. This was an important early one where they discovered sort of orange dirt on the moon. They were expecting to just find completely monochrome grey stuff, and to actually find orange was incredibly exciting. There's a lot of images of the astronauts inadvertently capturing themselves and getting themselves in the shots, whether it's their shadows or someone else's feet, boot prints, and again, more shadows. So I'll start going a bit quicker now, but as we kind of look through, I think, really just try to enjoy these like amazing, amazing shots. And you can look through the archives and it's, boring work. There's tons and tons of ones that look exactly the same because they've shot over and over again to make sure they get get what they need. These are from a variety of missions. So we've got Apollo 11, 12, obviously not 13. They didn't actually manage to land. 14 did a bit more driving around. I should point out at this point, our plan at this point is to put together a book of some of our favorite ones, match them up with the captions and the kind of information that is out there. All these images are completely free. They're all like really well archived, and every single bit of information is being catalogued. There's a couple of great sites. There's the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal, which basically maps everything that they did on the moon down to like the transmissions, where they went. As we were looking at images, we came across more and more of what we'd like to sort of call mistakes, so things like the tape on the end of the picture. I'll get to that more in a minute or so. More experiments. In later missions, of course, they had the lunar rover, so they were able to travel further and explore more mountainous regions of the lunar highlands. Again, this is like a great kind of end of reel tape where they've got markings on it. There's a couple of anomalies as well, just weird things that, not quite sure what they are. And among the most common ones we started to come across were ones like this one, which are sort of blurred, sort of sun-streaky kind of ones. And it turns out what they did at the end of each Hasselblad film roll is to fire off a few shots, just to make sure they didn't sort of ruin any important shots. So you look through the archive, and there's loads and loads of black and white, and then these color ones just really, really jump out at you. As a little side note, this camera recently sold for nearly $1 million. This is reputedly one of only 4 cameras to come back from the moon. Most of the Hasselblads they use is especially modified Hasselblads. They're abandoned due to weight issues. So when they came back, they had so many moon rocks, they didn't want to bring anything they didn't need to. So most of the cameras were left behind. This one apparently was brought back. There's a huge sort of controversy as to whether it actually went down to the surface or whether it was just in the Lunar Command Module which orbited the moon. And if it did go down to the surface, whether the lens was used or just the back or the front. And one of the main clues is the famous little crosses that you see in a lot of the lunar photographs. And that's a little glass plate to sort of allow comparison for distance. And each one is engraved with a specific number. So the auction house said that that specific one had been on the moon, which is why it sold for nearly $1 million to actually the Japanese founder of a large chain of photography shops in Japan. So that's unique. So basically at the end of each one, they basically fired off, they just pointed at the ground, and I think created, in my opinion, some of the nicest work of the Apollo program. Just these beautiful kind of sun-streaky, kind of smeared, aimed at the sun, often blurred and usually very, very artistic shots. I think that's exactly 10 minutes, so we'll be publishing some information a little bit sooner about the book. If you want to check that out, it's supercollider.com, and yeah, it'll be in much more detail than I can go into tonight. I really encourage you just to explore the archive. It's this incredible free resource that humanity has created, and it just seems not enough people really know about it. Thank you very much.